Hey, so today's video, because it's Halloween on Monday, was supposed to be scary tales from the comments section, complete with, uplit face and maybe a bit of Halloweeny makeup and other stuff that was meant to bring a smile to the channel. And no, I'm not dressing up as Queenie Dearheart this year, despite some of the requests from you guys to do so. I can tell you in the words of Queenie Octavia Christina Dearheart, darling, we're very, very, very touched that you love me so much. I need my beauty sleep. No, today instead, I'm making a video that, as the title suggests, most of you won't even watch. In fact, yeah, I can hear many, many people clicking away to watch something else because, as you might have guessed, this video isn't directly related to electric vehicles and cleaner, greener, safer and smarter energy and transportation. Yet it is. And this video, selfishly, on my part, is going to be directed to just a tiny proportion of our audience. I say tiny. It is actually the majority of the people who watch this audience because I'm talking about the United States. Yes, it's that time of year again. Midterm season is upon us. In just over a week's time, the US will have its midterm elections, and for most American citizens, that means it's time to vote for who you want to represent you, both at a local level, very local, so like your local council in your city that you live in, the region that you live in, but also within your state, and more broadly, representing your community and your state in national government. And I feel that we, as a team who try and bring you cleaner, greener, safer and smarter vehicles, who try to cover the world in a open and fair way, would be remiss not to remind you that now is the time to make sure that you are not only registered to vote, because frankly, few states have same-day voter registration these days, and most states require you to already be voted in order to be eligible to vote, but that you do the required research to make sure that when you do go into the ballot box or you cast your vote-in mail ballot, that you know who you are voting for. And this year, even if you've been living under a rock, even if you say, I don't like politics, I don't want to know anything about politics, it's super important for the future of both electric vehicles, but also the communities that we live in. I'm going to start by talking about how electric vehicles are viewed by different political parties. And I should note that electric vehicles are a bipartisan issue. There are many Democratic politicians who remain suspicious of electric vehicles. There are many Republican politicians who support electric vehicles. And so it's important that you don't necessarily vote by party lines when choosing who you want to represent you. It's going to take some work on your part. And that's why I'm talking to you about it today, because actual voting day is not for another week and a day. If you're watching this on Monday, if you're watching this on a different day, then make the appropriate adjustments. Knowing what your local representatives, what the local candidates that are wanting to be your candidate to represent you wherever, is important to know what their policies are on clean energy, electric vehicles, renewable and sustainable future projects for your region, but also clean transportation. Do they support community bus programs? Do they support high-speed rail? Do they support electric vehicle charging in disenfranchised communities to try and help build up those communities? The ones who we've covered time and time and time again are the ones that disproportionately feel the brunt of anthropogenic climate change. Do your local candidates, the one that you are considering voting for, do they think that tax credits should be something that everybody gets, or should they be focused towards people who have a lower income to try and lift those people up? Those questions and the answers to them are things that you should all have in your mind when you go to the polls. They are things that I've had in my mind when I've been researching my local candidates. And of course, there are other issues that I am very, very passionate about, such as reproductive rights and gun legislation and LGBTQ issues, all of which have a massive impact on both the people that I care about, but also myself, the community that I live in, and the world I want to be a part of. And so, right now, if you are someone who is considering not voting because you are of the opinion that all the candidates are just as bad as each other, or you're someone who doesn't view voting as important, or you're someone who will just vote for whatever matches the candidate that the party that you are registered with, I want you to stop and think about it and actually do the groundwork and think about these issues on a wider scale. In our world, we only grow if we listen to people who have different opinions to us, but also when we speak up against obvious hate, obvious misinformation, and an attempt to corrupt the reality of the world that we live in. And this election cycle, we're seeing that with electric vehicles. As you will have seen, or rather, as you will see, as you will have seen, because the video went live on Friday. Sorry, I'm having a bit of a brain fart. Kate just published a video about electric vehicle fires and electric vehicle fires caused by flooding. And she pointed out that many politicians are jumping on that bandwagon because campaigning against electric vehicles is in their best interests, and the spectre of fires caused by flooded electric vehicle battery packs suits their narrative. And when that happens, there's a lot of damage done to the EV world, to the cleaner, greener, safer and smarter community. And so it's important to not only figure out what candidates want and what their beliefs are, but also to try and sniff out what is actually true and positive and what is not. It's important to note that the current US administration has spent a significant chunk of money, aided on by the way, bipartisan acts, to both encourage the adoption of electric school buses and encourage the expansion of EV charging infrastructure, to expanding the availability of EV tax credits so that used electric vehicles are available for the first time, to incentivizing the establishing of a clean, green economy here in the US with solar panels, with renewable energy generations like wind turbine manufacturing all coming to the US, and promoting a new tax credit system that prioritizes domestically made vehicles made in collaboration with labor unions, but also in collaboration with other local businesses using locally sourced and locally manufactured parts. If that is something that you are wanting to support, see if the candidate you are voting for supported those measures. And if they didn't, you kind of want to know why. Finally, and I've kept myself out of this to this point, but I feel now that I do have to, especially with Twitter being purchased by Elon Musk, and Elon Musk talking about wanting Twitter to be a free place where you have exchanges of ideas from different angles and different spaces, which is a wonderful idea in theory, but much harder to produce in practice. There's been growing sentiment in the US lately of anti-immigrant, anti-Semitic, anti-LGBTQ rhetoric that many politicians and news organizations are whipping up. And not so long ago, somebody that I had interacted with for many years on Facebook got into a discussion with me about some of the legislation going on in Florida right now regarding the treatment of trans children and some of the things they said were patently false. And some of the claims they were making were patently false. And I struggled at that point, as someone who herself is trans, to try and understand how that person believed that misinformation and wasn't willing to listen to my knowledge and experiences myself, my own personal experiences, to balance that out and allow them to come to a more common ground understanding. And I think that is because we've become so split, so against each other politically, regardless of whether you are someone who considers yourself a Republican, a Democrat, or a centrist, or a libertarian. We've lost the concept of common dialogue. And because of that, we now have candidates who are going up for re-election who are demonizing minorities, who are demonizing children in an attempt to score political points. And the final thought I have for you is this. Do you want that to be your future? All of the electric car stuff, throw that in too. Pick the candidate who speaks not only to what you feel is fair and just and responsible and ethical, but also the policies that you would want your family and your loved ones to experience in the future. And if any of the discrimination that's currently going on, whether it is reproductive rights, whether it is voter suppression, whether it is LGBTQ rights, if you are in any doubt about where you stand on that, ask yourself, how would I feel if this was my partner, my son, my daughter, my cousin, my niece, my nephew, my uncle, my grandparents, any of those? Ask yourself that question. And when you go to the ballot box, vote with your heart. Vote without selfishness. Leave that beside. Vote for everybody. Because at the end of the day, it's not just you on the planet, it's everybody else.